Hey folks, Roland Martin here with Roland Martin Unfiltered, broadcasting live from San Antonio at the 109th NAACP National Convention. National Convention began yesterday here in San Antonio with the NAACP AXO competition. A little bit earlier, they actually had the awarding of all of the various first, second, and third place. It was a 40th annual NAACP AXO competition. It was founded by the late journalist Vernon Jarrett, of course, and so we are here for their public program. And so this in many ways actually kicks off the convention. And so even though yesterday they had their ribbon cutting, their opening news conference, this is the public program. Yesterday, I moderated a session dealing hashtag Black Votes Matter. And so if you actually see back there, you see defeat, hate, vote. That is the actual theme of this particular conference being held here in San Antonio in Texas, where folks have been fighting voter suppression in Texas for quite a long time. Now, also, like I say, the program is just starting. Who you hear singing is the NAACP choir. And so they have actually been entertaining this audience for the past 20 or 30 minutes or so. The convention kicks off with a speech every Sunday night by the NAACP chairman. This time it will be Leon Russell, of course, who took the place of Rosalind Block, who was named chairman emeritus. She's still on the NAACP national board. There have been lots of changes with the NAACP since last year. There were new CEO, Derek Johnson, who previously was the head of the Mississippi State Conference of the NAACP. And so we will be, of course, a little bit earlier on Roland Martin Unfiltered. We actually played the interview that I did with him last week at Essence Festival. Now, he will be, of course, sharing his opening speech tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, we'll have that for you as well. Also speaking at this convention is the former governor of Massachusetts, Deval Patrick. He'll be speaking at noon tomorrow. It's also going to be a public program put on by the Youth and College Division of the NAACP, led by, of course, Tiffany Lofton. You often saw her on my TV One show, News One Now. And so you actually see her. So there are a number of people who are going to be participating in that as well. And so we're going to be bringing to you a lot of different interviews with folks all across the country who are here. Nearly 6,000 to 7,000 people are here for the NAACP convention. As you, we had the shot earlier. As you can see, they're all streaming in right now. There have been other sessions taking place in the NAACP exhibit hall called the NAACP Experience. And so folks are coming in right now for the beginning of this particular program as well. The NAACP is at a critical juncture, of course, in its history as it has new leadership, but also as they prepare for civil rights in the age of Donald Trump. For the second time, Donald Trump has refused to attend the NAACP convention. Donald Trump has not even met with the NAACP leadership. In fact, Donald Trump has not had a single meeting with any folks from the civil rights organizations. Attorney General Jeff Sessions, he has met with folks like Christian Clark, Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, Sherlyn Ifill, NAACP Legal Defense Fund, as well as National Urban League, NAACP, National Action Network, Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr., and Rainbow Push. Well, Donald Trump has not done so. And, of course, folks have been highly critical of his leadership as president, his refusal to deal with the issue of civil rights. And so what we want to do right now, is talk about this whole issue of civil rights. And I'm going to welcome right now, folks, from Virginia, Congressman Bobby Scott, who's going to join us right now as well. He is here attending the convention. And so I want to welcome Congressman Scott. Congressman, how you doing? Good seeing you. Do me a favor, take a seat right here. So, Congressman, we're actually live streaming right now. And so I just ask you first real quick. This is the second time Donald Trump has refused to speak to this convention. He refuses to address the issue of civil rights.
Education isn't even fully staffing the department, their civil rights division. They're cutting back civil rights, voting rights, every kind of different way you can. They are addressing civil rights, And our response has got to be to vote. The system isn't fair. They're doing voter suppression. They're doing gerrymandering. And our only defense, we can't count on the Supreme Court anymore. You know you can't count on the executive branch anymore. We got to make sure that the legislative branch reflects our views, and that means you got to vote in November.
And of course, we're here in Texas, where federal courts 5 different times said Texas voter ID was discriminatory. The Obama administration sided with the plaintiffs. The Trump administration comes in, they side with the state of Texas. They are defending discriminatory voter ID across the country.
And our response has got to be to vote in November. We can't do anything about the Trump administration and the way they're going. We can do something about the direction of the United States Congress. We haven't had any hearings to speak of on the taking children from their parents because the majority doesn't want to have hearings. They have an education bill that actually makes student loans more expensive to pay off. I mean, what kind of direction is that? They're trying to take away people's health care, doing nothing on criminal justice reform. Our only response has got to be, even though it's not fair, make sure we vote and make sure the legislative branch responds to these crises.
I got to ask you, what do you make of the Trump's DOJ decision to reopen the Emmett Till case as a result of Carolyn Bryant admitting she lied about Emmett Till?
I think it's a step forward. Everybody knows that justice delayed is justice denied, but it's better than no justice at all. And so I think reopening that case, in light of the fact that I understand one of the guys has admitted to it, the other lady admitted she lied, so why is not, this case should be reopened. That's just one case, though. What about all criminal justice? They're talking about inflicting draconian mandatory minimums when not necessary as a matter of policy. There's a lot this administration is doing wrong, and we can put a check on it if we have the right people elected in November.
When you talk about, again, you see the slogan NAACP in terms of combating hate. We're seeing every day black folks cutting grass, having a coupon at a CVS. White folks are just calling the cops for any reason whatsoever. I mean, there is just this consistent attack on African Americans.
Well, the response has got to be to vote so that we can pass legislation and respond to legislation and at least have hearings. We haven't had any hearings to talk about what's going on in health care, what's going on in education, what's going on in criminal justice, what's going on in voting rights, what's going on with taking parents from children, children from parents at the border. We need some hearings. There's stuff going on in the administrative branch where all you got to do is invite the people and say, what's going on? And you'll have people who will have to admit, I told them not to do that. And
right.
There are people in the Department of Homeland Security that told them not to do zero tolerance because children, they weren't prepared to deal with the children. They knew that going in, and we need to have hearings to expose the things going on that are going on. And the only way to do that, vote in November.
Last question for you, just your response to the indictment of 12 Russian intelligence officers and how it is hard for me to even call him president because a president of the United States would respond in the affirmative against Russia and Putin. He has attacked President Obama. He has attacked Hillary Clinton. He literally has said nothing about the attack on the American election system.
Well, my strategy has been to let Mueller do his job. He's had indictment after indictment, several guilty pleas. When he makes his report, we'll know what it is. Obviously, there was Russian interference with the election. He'll let us know what the facts are, what the evidence shows.
But he should do it. But he should finish his job.
He should finish. He should take the time to get it done right. You had a complaint from one gentleman who was running the Benghazi thing for a year and a half, didn't find anything, telling it's time to wrap the thing up. Well, he didn't wrap his thing up.
Right.
Let's let him do his job. Let him do it right. But in the meanwhile, what we can do, vote in November.
All right. Congressman Bobby Scott, I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Roland, thank you.
Virginia, I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right, folks. Thanks a lot. We're going to slide in my good friend next. Take the Congressman place. He is Mark Thompson. You hear him, of course, Sirius XM Radio. Before that, folks heard in D.C. area on WOL. Mark, how's it going?
Fine, brother. Good to see you, Roland.
Good to see you as well,
What's
Doc.
happening down
All
here
good?
In your neck of the woods, sort of.
Yeah, born and raised in Houston. It's over not even about 3 miles, about 3 hours away.
Yeah.
I gotta ask you this, Anthony. Do me a favor, and I want everybody at home to understand this. Do me a favor. I want you to actually take that camera there, and I want you to pan left. Now, folks, this is the media dais. This is the media dais, and I want you to see who's not here. I want you to see who's not here. If you want to understand why I'm launching Roland Martin Unfiltered on my daily digital show September 4th, it's because of this. Here you have the nation's largest and oldest civil rights organization in the country. Here you have major civil rights issues taking place all across the country. And you do not have any other national media outlets that are here. And Mark, this just speaks to why we have to have our own. Your show, Sirius XM, Joe Madison, of course, again, when I'm launching September 4th, I made it clear we're going to be here. We're going to be live streaming stuff. We cannot afford to expect other folk to cover and tell our story.
Never have, never will. And let me commend you on what you're doing on September 4th. That's a big undertaking. It takes a lot of courage. Stepping out,
money, and I'm going to get to that a little bit later, folks.
Well, but I'm going to get to it now. Stepping out on faith. Folks, we have to support our own. We have to be able to tell our stories and tell our version of our story because nobody else will. And there's so many things happening. We just had another major police shooting in Chicago on just last night.
Police attacking journalists.
Right.
Beating folks with batons.
Right. And I'm looking, you panned. Are we the only two media here at this particular moment? I think we are.
I haven't. I mean, there are some other folks who I've seen. But I have not seen. Earlier, the San Antonio newspaper was interviewing Anthony Anderson.
Okay.
I saw a couple of other outlets, but I have not seen a lot of media folks.
Yeah, and there's so much to be covered, so much to be done. Always important things to discuss at the convention. Tell you what I did, as I always do. I pre-record interviews today with I went to the Branch President's Council meeting, spoke with branch presidents because NAACP's strength has always been local, really.
Right, 2,200 national, 2,200 branches, not the national office in Baltimore.
Right.
The branches, all volunteer.
And there have been local struggles that are not reported at all. They don't want to cover the national, let alone the local, the mainstream media, that is. And so hearing what some of these local branches are dealing with, the 5 sisters who were kicked off the golf course in Pennsylvania.
Right.
One of them is the president of the York, Pennsylvania branch of the NAACP. And they didn't know who they were messing with when they did that. So, we've got to get these stories out. It's very important that we support our own media, we support our press, and we support Roland. I don't know the mechanism to give or subscribe to Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. And again, our target goal is simple. We want 20,000 people who are contributing a minimum of $50. Now, there are some other people, they've already given more. Some have given 100, some have given more than that.
Right.
What that does is that raises $1 million. That's important because now we can travel. Now we can come to places like this here. Now we can go to other conventions. I mean, because the thing, and I'm telling you, I've been reading. Gerald Horns has a book out on Claude Burnett and the Negro Associated Press. I'm reading also a book on Ethel Payne, Alice Dunnigan. I got Robert Abbott's book as well. And were it not for black newspapers,
That's right.
Were it not for black newspapers, we would not have been informed during those dark periods. And I keep telling the folk, shows get canceled, people come and go, but we got to make sure that we always have ours.
And hey, listen, some of these black press have been around for 100 years. Some of the same newspapers, they honored branches today, individual branches in NAACP that are 100 years old this year. So these local branches have been going for 100 years. I can say this as part of Sirius XM, we're just subscriber based. People have to subscribe to hear me. Y'all ought to give money, subscribe, whatever the model is, to support what Roland is doing, and I truly hope people will do that.
When you talk about being here, we talk about these branches and what is happening across the country. You're right. I've run into people. I ran to the brother. He said, "Man, you had me on when John Crawford was shot and killed.
Right.
When I think, matter of fact, if I think back to the 4 years of News One Now and TV One, I mean, we had any number of NAACP folks from Baton Rouge to Minneapolis to all over the place. And the thing that I keep trying to tell people, and it always amazes me how people. I had a brother tweet me the other day, NAACP ain't done nothing for black people. Here's the reality: there is no other black organization that when somebody black gets in trouble anywhere in America, there is no other organization who they call first. That's just I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm not saying they're going to always be there, but it's just a reality. This is who they call first.
Well, and because of the infrastructure that it has, and even the brothers who say that NAACP doesn't do anything, they're the first ones NAACP call when they get in trouble on the job. If you don't believe it, ladies and gentlemen, just go volunteer. If your NAACP has an office, go volunteer to be a receptionist one day, because they need volunteers. Just go spend a couple hours, and you hear the phone ringing.
Let's say this again. This is a volunteer-based organization.
That's right.
A lot of people really think these folks are out here getting paid full-time salaries. No, these people who have been, you meet people, man, they said, man, I've been leading in 30, 40 years. They have not gotten paid for that.
No.
I know people, it's very easy to attack NAACP. It's very easy to attack Urban League, Rainbow Push, National Action Network, all these groups. But the reality is they are depending on folks, what you just said, who drop by, who give 3, 6 months, a year, 5, 10, 20 years of their time.
We're not going to have freedom by way of our organizations or freedom by way of our own media unless all of us sacrifice and volunteer and give a little money. That's very, very important for us to understand, especially in this hour when it seems that everything is being rolled back. We have a Supreme Court justice has been nominated, and they've already begun this process. We talk about other things being rolled back, like Roe, like same-sex marriage and all that kind of stuff. But the fact of the matter is they've already rolled back voting rights, and they're rolling back Brown to the extent that we're having more de facto segregation in America.
Oh, yes.
And that was the landmark case for the NAACP.
This is, and I need people to understand this, what is happening with the Supreme Court, this is by design. The folks that they have hated, they hated the federal court decisions since Brown. They hated what the Fifth Circuit did in pushing Brown through. And so they understood, okay, you know what? We can't have Jim Crow laws, but we can have court decisions. Go back and, folks, I want y'all to go Google this. I want you to go back and read the writings of William Rehnquist, who Kavanaugh praised.
Yeah.
He praised. William Rehnquist actually wrote a legal paper when he was a clerk for Supreme Court Justice that Brown versus Board of Education was unconstitutional.
Yeah.
He wrote that the Civil Rights Act of 64 should not have been passed as well. That's who Kavanaugh
that's who
saw as a mentor.
Idolizes,
And so, and look, the Federalist Society, all those judges they gave to Trump, they were all pre-approved. They knew where they stood on every major issue, and the national media keeps talking about Roe v. Wade, same-sex marriage, but for us, it is affirmative action, it is civil rights laws, it's equal employment, it's all of that, and they are hell-bent on trying to absolutely roll it back.
No, you're right, and so these are the fights NAACP is fighting. The theme of this whole convention is vote, defeat hate, and vote. So that's what has to be done. Folks, we got to walk and chew gum at the same time. We are right back in the place where we were 50 years ago and even before that, where we've got to support our freedom fighter organizations, whatever they are. If you're in the Rainbow, if you're in NAN, if you're in the Urban League, I'm a life member of all of them. And try to support each and every one. And each one has different cultures and does different things. They aren't perfect, but, support, if nothing else, your local branch of the NAACP, because you may need them someday.
Hey,
you're going to need this brother too. Support what he's trying to do, because this is the wave of the future. We can make our own media, and I would really encourage people to get behind Roland and support what he does. He's going to be bringing us the news every single day from a perspective on television we otherwise wouldn't get.
When you talked about in terms of what is happening, Donald Trump goes to Europe, criticizes immigration there. says how they're losing their culture.
That's right.
He is using the language of white nationalism.
That's right. And as inspired in his role as a Russian agent. And Russia has been, everything he's saying has been a line Russia's been pushing in Europe for a number of years, making enemies. He is doing that verbatim. So, we got to fight back against this. The only way we fight back is to do what we've always done, and that is stand up for ourselves.
It's very interesting to me when we had a panel yesterday, hashtag Black Votes Matter, and folks were, and what the panelists said, which is absolutely true. They said, look, we are not saying that voting is the be-all to end-all. What this is, though, is a part of the process, that you can't act as if voting has no place, or, well, let me just wait to see what y'all do, then I'm going to vote. No. You simply cannot. No. And we can't afford to be apathetic by any way, shape, or form. It's very, very urgent that we get involved and what have you. What is happening here and what happens every year, one of the things that inspires me the most is the young people. I mean, a lot of young people that come to NAACP convention, the AXO competition, that's something else that's not covered and reported on. Now, I've challenged myself. I haven't had a chance to do it. I procrastinated on it. One year I'm going to come here and just cover the AXO, Roland, and lift that up. And a lot of people, because this was the 40th anniversary this year.
That's right.
The 40th anniversary. I say at the outset, it was founded by a black journalist.
Yeah. By
Vernon Jarrett.
That's right. That's right.
And what happened was earlier. So they had it all yesterday. The awards was today. So I told NAACP people, I said, get us a copy of it, and what we're going to do is we're going to live stream the whole awards presentation so folks can see it, so they can actually see. And I earlier today I interviewed Anthony Anderson. Anthony Anderson participated in AXO, and won it when he was involved in it. And there's so many African Americans, and folks understand this ain't a basketball competition.
No,
this ain't football. I mean, this is music, this is storytelling, this is writing, this is poetry, this is science. People don't realize NASA, now I don't know under this dude, but before, they would send their people here and would sign up the winners of the scientific competition. And they've actually had AXO winners who had their experiments on space shuttle missions.
Isn't that something? Yeah. This is an academic Olympics. We don't always hear reporting on the positive things our young people are doing. But that is what is going on here at the NAACP, and it's been going on for, as you said, 40 years. So that's very, very important. And, again, we're not going to hear about that if we don't have brothers like Roland doing the things he's doing and all of us supporting the things that you're doing.
Just a couple more questions for you because, again, they're about to start everything. Now talking at the stage right now is Karen Towns. She's speaking, and so we're going to have her over here. I texted her to come over here and chat with us, but we're going to have her as well. This week, Deval Patrick, he's going to be here as well. Folks are talking about him potentially running for president. I read a report when I came here already. You have moves being made by Senator Elizabeth Warren, by Senator Kamala Harris, by Senator Cory Booker. But also you have some mayors, Gil Garcetti in L.A., Mitchell Andrew, formerly mayor in New Orleans, the mayor in South Bend, Indiana, thinking about running as well. What do you make of what is happening in terms of with the folks who are making those moves? And I'm surprised none of them decided to come here.
Well, actually tonight, Julian Castro is speaking, and he's someone who's thinking about some things. In fact, I know at one time he was
former mayor of San Antonio, former HUD Secretary under Obama.
Right, and he was considered as a running mate for Hillary Clinton at one time. My understanding is that a lot of the senators were invited, but with everything going on back in the Senate with the Supreme Court piece and what's going on with Trump and Putin, people were actually afraid to come down to San Antonio because there are going to be some important votes this week. So they're using that as a logistical piece. Normally, you have a much greater turnout of potential candidates, but this is just getting up and running.
Right.
Next year, of course, everybody's probably going to be coming to the NAACP convention as they always do, and as well they should. But folks are gearing up. It's about time for us to start thinking about what's going to happen.
Last question. Obviously, you now have new leadership of the NAACP. Leon Russell is the chair.
Right.
Derek Johnson is the president. Derek has really been focused on going inside of the NAACP, getting down and dirty, looking at contracts, studying all those different things. Your assessment of his leadership thus far?
I think Derek's doing a great job. I think he stepped into a very, very difficult situation. He was interim, and the NAACP made a decision it needed to even clean up its own house even before it did some big outside search. And that's what they did. And so Derek has stepped into that role. I think he's doing an excellent job. It's going to take some time. He's going to ruffle some feathers in terms of the bureaucracy and the culture in the NAACP, but I think it's high time. The organization in a national place needs to be shaken and reset somewhat. I'm not saying it's been doing a lot wrong, but it's got to get ready for the next generation, and then hopefully, younger people will get more involved, want to take over positions, want to get active. People need to get back to realizing the urgency to being a part of an organization like the NAACP. We would not be where we are. The NAACP was centered around lynchings in the early 1900s, and we're seeing lynchings again. Again, what just happened in Chicago last night to that man who was a pillar in the community, my understanding, what I heard earlier this morning, he was a single father raising a 5-year-old daughter, a barber. The NAACP and the work it has always done is as relevant as it has always been. Derek is a good leader for this moment, and I think we all should really continue to get behind it.
Mark, tell folks where they can check you out every day on SiriusXM.
And as always, brother, thank you for having me, folks. Support Roland Martin Unfiltered. I'm supporting it, pushing it on my show, which you can hear every morning, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern Time on SiriusXM Satellite Radio, SiriusXM Progress, Channel 127.
All right, Mark, I appreciate it. Thanks
brother.
so much.
I like this. Got this pink on. Y'all see, because he know he going to always do the thing.
Well, I was honored with the Vanguard Award this week from the AKs at their Boulay, so I go ahead and wear the pink.
Yeah, I've been talking about you too, because my ex-wife's brother-in-law is a Q. So my son's 16 now. I didn't know he was thinking about pledging.
Right.
And he says, I might have to. Uncle Allen's a Q. I might pledge Q. I said, no, you can't pledge Q. That's the only reason I'm not an Alpha. Is because I went to Georgetown where we didn't really have fraternities, and I played Georgetown basketball. I was one of Big John Thomas's managers, so we couldn't play.
Right.
But my grandfather founded the Alphas at Tennessee State University, Nashville, Tennessee. They went over, all the brothers, about 4 of them, Roland, they pledged in the 30s at Meharry Medical College. And then they went back to Tennessee State and got everything chartered. And so I said to my son, your great-grandfather was an Alpha, so you're going to have to pledge Alpha.
And, of course, your mentor, your good friend.
That's right.
Dick Gregory.
Sure was. So
also
I said to my son that when he gets ready to pledge, I may go ahead and make that decision myself.
Okay.
And cross it over. It's about time. So I was just telling that to somebody else, a brother from Dallas he said, I'm an Alpha like Roland. I said, well, I know about that.
All right,
so
well, tell your son if you need to have a conversation with me, we can look that up. I
love you,
appreciate
brother.
it, Mark. I appreciate it, love you, brother. Appreciate it.
Man.
Thanks so much.
Take care.
Again, folks, we're here at the 109th NAACP convention here in San Antonio. And the thing about, I want to say what Mark was just telling folks about, what I need y'all to understand, that is critically important. Many, I've already been looking, and many folks have been posted on the Facebook, and they're like, what happened with TV One? Look, this is the deal. TV One canceled, News One out. The show is gone. The show is not coming back. But I'm not waiting for that. I'm not waiting for permission. I'm not waiting for somebody to do something. What I am doing is doing exactly what we're doing right here, building this, making this possible, and that's what the focus has been. And so I think for a lot of folks, don't worry about what somebody else is or isn't doing. So the thing is, what we need to do is just focus on what we are doing. So we're focused on Roland Martin Unfiltered. You can get more details by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. And here's what I want all of you who are on YouTube, who are watching, who are on Periscope, who are watching, who are on Facebook, who are watching. I want you to share this stream right now everywhere. I want you to share this with all of your followers. I want you to share this with all of your friends. I want to see that count. I'm looking at it right now. I'm monitoring our live feed. I want to see that count increase big time because that's what's important for us also to get the word out what is happening here as well. And so I'm going to do this here. We're going to go to the stage. Michael Turner is speaking right now. I want to go to the switch to the stage, and then we're going to come back for an interview right here.
When John Shalady traveled to Austin to investigate, he was charged with inciting Negroes against whites. Beaten so badly by a mob led by the county judge and constable, Shalady would never recover and succumb to his injuries the next year. Here in San Antonio, activist John A. Grumbles, a wealthy black man who was highly regarded by white civic leaders and well connected to the political machine, read about the work of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. He was impressed and inspired by the work being done by the association in other states. He was disturbed by the failure of whites to obey anti-Jim Crow ordinances in his hometown, and so it was his idea that the NAACP might be the catalyst to bring about some justice to the San Antonio black citizens. Mr. Grumbles called together a group of people whom he felt had leadership ability and concern for the conditions that were allowed to exist. That initial meeting included Mr. Grumbles, who would become the branch's first president, Ms. Carol Brooks, Ms. Edna Billups Carter, Mr. J.D. Lowry Sr., Mr. Harold Tarver, Mr. Cal Burton, Mrs. F. Hooks, Reverend Lazarus Richards, and Dr. J.T. Walton. In March 1918, the San Antonio branch was organized with 503 members. This branch focused its energies on the repeated offenses occurring on board railroad Jim Crow coaches. The early work of the San Antonio branch led to a surge in membership from 500 to nearly 1,300 by year's end, making it the largest in the state of Texas. With the unexpected death of Mr. Grumbles, Harold Tarver became branch president. Tarver instituted a program to train black nurses, sought to continue the tradition of independent vote casting, and maintained the cooperation between civil rights groups and civic leaders. Major emphasis was placed on increasing employment for black women. The struggle continued to eliminate employment discrimination in the 1960s, human rights in the 1970s, and racial equality and justice in the 1980s. On this, our first visit to San Antonio, we maintain our unrelenting pursuit of liberty proclaimed by the Founding Fathers in the 1776 Declaration of Independence. Against this backdrop, we've come to San Antonio with heads yet unbowed. We come together tonight to encourage each other and to proclaim renewed progress for our beloved NAACP. In our 109th year as our nation's oldest, baddest, boldest civil rights organization, it is our responsibility to unite our communities and to help them recognize their own power, encourage them to continue to struggle for justice and freedom during this critical year of ongoing change, turmoil, and uncertainty. We come to you under the banner of our theme, Defeat Hate, Vote. This is our charge as we convene the 109th Annual Convention of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People here in the city of San Antonio. It is my honor to call the 109th and 9th Annual Convention of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People to order. At this time, it is most fitting that we pay tribute to Mrs. Minnie Mabry Hill, spouse of San Antonio Branch President Oliver Hill, who passed away May 4th, 2018, at the age of 74. Mrs. Hill and her husband Oliver provided the primary leadership for successfully bringing this 109th convention to San Antonio for the first time in its 109-year history. Now, on a personal note, this is bittersweet because I know she's up looking down on you, Mr. Branch President, on Vice Chair Dukes and myself, because we spent the last 2 years coming here working with the Hills, and I tell you, we would not be here if it was not for Minnie Hill. Ms. Hill was a devoted and diligent civil servant who never let anything slow her down. He has said that she even gave him tasks to complete while she was in the hospital, recovering from a stroke. He emphasized that she was that kind of person who wanted to make sure everything was decently done and in order. City Councilman Cruz Shaw noted that our community was blessed by Mrs. Hill's presence and leadership. We are hurting, but must be strong for Mr. Hill, their children, and grandchildren. He stated that Mrs. Hill's passion for serving the San Antonio community and her fearless advocacy on behalf of the NAACP will live on forever. NAACP National Chairman of the Board, Leon Russell, advised that the selection of San Antonio as the host of the 109th Convention and also on the 100th anniversary of the San Antonio branch was largely because of Mrs. Minnie Hill's determination. And I'm proud to be wearing this special pin that the San Antonio branch had, and they're selling it, and I urge each of you to purchase one to support this phenomenal branch. You don't get to be 100 years old by accident. You get to be there by being strong, living right, and doing right. It is also said that her spirit will shine over our NAACP convention, and we know that it will. Now let's do this for Minnie. Friends, please stand for a moment of silent tribute to Mrs. Minnie Mabry Hill, husband Oliver, children, and grandchildren. May God be with you, and I know she's smiling down upon us. Essentially to our convention are the presiding officers and parliamentarians who will serve, during the preliminary and legislative sessions for the rest of this convention, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I ask that each of you please stand when I call your name. Gary Bledsoe, Austin, Texas. Tevin Ellis, San Antonio, Texas. Aubrey Hooper, Dallas, Texas. Howard
All right, folks,
Jefferson.
welcome back. You, of course, they are mentioning the various delegates, and you just heard him mention Aubrey Hooper of the Dallas NAACP. Well, he's joining me right now, right next to me. Aubrey, how you doing?
I can't complain. How you doing, Roland?
Doing great. You are working with Next Gen.
Absolutely.
So explain to folks who watch exactly what Next Gen is.
So Next Gen is our very intentional opportunity to engage and train the next generation of young leaders of our branches and our state conferences. individuals between the ages of 21 to 35 from across the country.
And again, we often hear a lot of people who say that NAACP is too old, too many old members. But a lot of people really don't understand that a lot of folks got their start in the youth and college division of the NAACP.
Well, I'm one of them. I started as a 9-year-old at the NAACP and now branch president and assistant secretary of the National Board of Directors. So this was really the training ground for my career as well as my advocacy efforts. And so the NAACP is definitely relevant to all generations. And we are very much so committed to preparing the next generation of leaders as well as the current generation.
And when we, what happens here, I mean, first of all, and I know Tiffany Lofton very well. Of course,
Absolutely.
she now runs the youth and college division of NAACP.
Very dynamic.
Do you have, there are a significant, in essence, there's sort of a convention within a convention, if you will.
Yes.
Because you have the NAACP, but also the youth division, college division. They have their own workshops, their own speakers, things like that.
Absolutely. So again, our youth and college division addresses individuals usually from around 10 to 25. And so they have their own workshops, they have their own schedule, and it really gives them the tools that they need to address the fight on the ground.
Hold tight 1 second. We'll just wait for the prayer.
All people deserve a living wage and safety and security. We just have to keep reminding everyone of the prophetic call. We just have to keep reminding everyone of the idyllic promises made by the founders of our nation, yet to be fulfilled. We just have to keep speaking up and speaking out, making sure all voices are heard and valued. Therefore, we pray. Holy One of Blessing, as we gather here in San Antonio this week, may we be moved to defeat hate by striving to recognize the humanity in every person we encounter. May we find the courage to bear witness to the struggles and triumphs of our lives, but also to listen with open minds and hearts to the perspectives and experiences of others. May this gathering fortify us for the work that lies ahead, encouraging others to find their own voices, inspired to use our vote to express the values and hopes we keep for ourselves, for our communities, and for our country. We are God's witnesses, the servants whom God has chosen. May God bless each of you with open hearts, minds, and spirits, so that this convention is one of uplift, of reflection, and of strength. Amen.
All right, folks, and welcome back. Again, we're talking with R.B. Hooper of the Dallas NAACP. We're talking about the Next Gen Project. What do you, as someone who started this at 9 years old, what would you say to somebody out there whose child isn't involved in the NAACP, why their young person should?
Well, one thing I will say is the NAACP exposed me to things that I never thought that I would have been able to be exposed to. It also gave me an appreciation for my culture, an appreciation for all of the sacrifices that generations before me had done. One of the most interesting experiences of my life that I carry with me was the date June 7th, 1998, and that was the day that James Byrd was killed. And on June 13th, the Texas State Conference and myself, we were down in Jasper, and I can remember walking the 1.5 trail that James Byrd was drawing, and I was 15 years old. I could still see blood splatter on the ground, and that has continued to hold me, because I asked the question, how does this happen in America? And so, to all of the things that we see that are happening across the country, how does this still happen in America in 2018? And so the NAACP gives that training to prepare students on how to properly address those, and also how to advocate so that we can change laws, so that we can change policies, and hopefully how we can work to change hearts.
Okay. All right. Well, Aubrey, we surely appreciate it. Thanks a bunch, and good luck.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it.
All right, folks. And so, again, they are first of all, this is for folks who are just tuning in. We're broadcasting from the public program of the NAACP, which, of course, you'll be hearing tonight from the chairman of the NAACP, Leon Russell. And so also there's a partnership that has actually started between the NAACP and the Church of Latter-day Saints. And so one of their elders will be here as well as a special presentation from their choir. And so that's what's taking place tonight. And so we started our anchored coverage of this. We're going to be live streaming events here from San Antonio today, tomorrow, as well as Tuesday. This conference closes with their Spingarn Medal Dinner, which takes place on Wednesday night. And so we're going to have lots of things to bring to you, lots of interviews as well with other people. And so I'm looking forward to that. And so, of course, right now what is happening is the singing of the Star Spangled Banner. That's what's going on right now. And so then the program will continue. And I anticipate them singing Lift Every Voice and Sing next. So let's just take some of that, and then we'll come back to you in just 1 second.
give a hand to Gregory Parson on organ and Autumn Foster on piano. You may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow delegates, it is my pleasure to introduce at this time a number of persons who will bring greetings this evening. I am asking that each limit their greetings to 3 minutes. First, Gary Bledsoe, President of the NAACP's Texas State Conference and member of the National Board of Directors, Austin, Texas, followed by, and I want y'all to give this one a grand welcome, Oliver Hill, President of the San Antonio branch, NAACP, followed by Cassandra May, President and CEO of Visit San Antonio, and you must know Visit San Antonio has been very good to us. So give her warm NAACP greetings too. And she will be followed by Elder Jack N. Gerard, Executive Director of Public Affairs Committee of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and then Thomas Battles, Chairman, Council of the President's National Panhellenic Council and Grand Power March, Kappa Alpha Psi. They will come in that order. Also, we have an addendum because I am so pleased to be joined this evening by the Castro brothers. Be it both the congressman and the former mayor of San Antonio and the secretary of HUD. They will also be bringing greetings at the end. So let's give it up to our state conference president, Gary Bledsoe.
Good evening, NAACP. I bring you greetings from the great state of Texas, all of the many tremendous NAACP units that we have here that go about their work every day, silently, doing the Lord's work, making lives of many people better. I bring you greetings from our Youth and College Division, which is second to none within the nation. I bring you greetings from the great state of Texas that houses the San Antonio branch, which Thurgood Marshall called one of the best branches in the NAACP. I must say that now we are on the shoulders of great people who stood before us. And I think it is so important that we have come to San Antonio for this meeting. Let me say that sometimes history does repeat itself. And this time I believe that we are equipped and have the individuals in place in the National Association to address the issues that confront us. So I'm so proud to say that the issues are there, but we're ready to confront them. Now let me say that I think that all of us must be very proud to be members of the NAACP, because not many people can say that they're members of organizations that have changed the world. And indeed, we have changed the world. We know how things were in this country 60, 70, 80 years ago. It was the insurgents of the NAACP that brought about those changes. But the sad thing is we're about to go through some very significant battles ahead that tell us that those battles, sadly, have to be fought again. We see where forces that seek to suppress us and repress us, that are afraid of our vote, are seeking to do everything that they can to keep us away from the ballot box. And we see where those forces have joined with international forces that are seeking to divide and undermine this nation. And it's like a boxer. You know, when you train for a boxing match, you try to find out, well, if they throw the left uppercut, do they drop their right hand and expose their left jaw? And if they do, then that's an exposure. What we found out with this whole thing in terms of the efforts of Russia to interfere with our election, that they understood that racism is a problem in this nation, and racism is a weakness within this nation. So it's up to the NAACP to again take the lead. It's up to us to go to all the hamlets around this nation and to discuss issues honestly and to bring forth the truth, because as they say, truth crushed earth shall rise again. And we know that in the state of Texas, where we have the history with the NAACP, where we helped make the NAACP because of the terrible things that have happened here, it's important that we be here. Whether it's the 1927 case of Nixon versus Herndon, whether it's the 1944 case of Smith versus Allwright, or the 1950 case of Sweat versus Painter, or whether it's 1916 and Jesse Washington being lynched in Waco and bringing attention to the lynching issue because the lynching occurred with an NAACP official there, and so people were able to film the actual lynching at the time that it occurred. Or whether it was 1918, 100 years ago, or just 70 miles from here, the NAACP was threatened, and the head of our organization, John Chilady, went to visit with the Texas Attorney General about them trying to get NAACP membership lists, and was beaten near death, and he never went back to the NAACP. That led to James Weldon Johnson becoming the first head of the NAACP of color. So I must say to all of you that we must join together. We must understand that there's a real fight ahead. We must understand that what's occurring in this nation is occurring in the world, and we can't go backwards. It's up to us to stand tall and to be the leader in this movement, because no one, no political party, no one can lead like the NAACP. Thank you for coming to San Antonio and the state of Texas, and I look forward to working with you and the great leadership of this fine organization.
All right, folks, that was Gary Bledsoe, of course, the longtime chair of this Texas State Conference of the NAACP. Also, just some breaking news. Police in Chicago have released the body cam footage. They released the body cam footage of the police officers who shot and killed an armed barber. That has led to various protests, and the protests are continuing in Chicago as we speak. And so we'll keep you up to date of what's going on right now. And so one of the things that I want to do right now is bring up some folks as well. And so L. Joy Williams, she is, of course, with the Brooklyn chapter of the NAACP. And so I want to bring her up right now. L. Joy? L. Joy? So when I bring her up right now, she, of course, has been very active in the Brooklyn chapter, also working to get black women elected to various offices as well as across the country. And so she's going to join us. She's going to join us right now. We'll chat with her. She was part of the panel I moderated yesterday dealing with Black Votes Matter. And so here she goes. I'll go ahead and take a seat. How's it going? All good. All good. And so yesterday, folks, if you saw the live stream yesterday, it was pretty funny. And so we talked about the issue of voting. And L. Joy said that she is a standard that when she is dating somebody, if the brother don't vote, she will end the date immediately.
Yes, I'm married now, but before then, it was. I mean, I brought it up as a topic of conversation in the first date because for me, I needed to know that you were tied or connected to a community, you understood the importance of voting, yeah, it's been some funny interactions.
I'm quite sure. Obviously, the whole issue of voting is dominating this particular conference. Mm-hmm. It is a part of the theme as well. And what do you see on the ground in terms of what are you hearing from people? A recent poll came out. Slate did a poll where they showed that, but it was between Democrats and Republicans, that Democrats are a lot more energized and focused on voting in November than Republicans are. and it's anywhere from a 7 to a 10-point gap. So just your thoughts.
Yeah, really in Brooklyn and in New York State overall, our voter turnout has been trending downward for some time. And it's a real issue. I mean, one, we have some of the worst voter suppression laws in New York State anyway, right? Even people being able to switch parties, you have to do that 13 months before an election. So even people who want to be engaged, there are barriers that prevent them from being able to do that. But more importantly is that people don't have the education, and people are not making the connection to folks on why they need to vote. Because actually in Brooklyn and in New York City, we don't really have that much of a registration problem. It's a turnout problem, right? People being able to, one, vote in the primary, which is really our election in New York City, because Democrats are 6-1 in the city, and yet we're experiencing so many of these issues.
So explain that, though.
Yeah.
So if Democrats are in control of the apparatus there, then why is it such a hard problem voting?
Well, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what party. When you're in power, you want to stay in power. And so it doesn't behoove anyone so they can talk a good game and join the rallies and say, yeah, we need to, change all of these laws. But at the end of the day, they don't go into the state legislature and make that happen. And we just saw that recently where they ended, finished session for the summer without addressing it, even though the governor said put it in his budget at that point. And so at the end of the day, whether they're Democrat, Republican, Green Party, or whatever, at a certain point, people want to maintain power. And, people can think about, well, if I have a same-day registration, I won't know who comes to the polls on Election Day, right? So that makes it difficult. That means I have to be accountable, more than just to a subsection of folks. I have to actually do my job in its entirety. And really, that's why people sort of feel this disconnect. They feel like, well, they're not going to do anything anyway. And what we talked about on that panel is when you demonstrate to people those small victories, when they can go to the council meeting, when they can go to the mayor's office and demand something change, or in their school, and then they begin to get that taste that if I get involved civically at some point that I can make a difference, then it's much easier to move them up the ladder of engagement.
Let's talk about Higher Heights, and so explain to folks exactly what that is and what it entails.
Yeah, Higher Heights for America is a national organization that is engaging black women in political leadership at all levels of engagement. And that is the woman who is running for office for the first time, whether they're running for mayor in the top 100 cities, you're running for Congress, or running for governor, in the case of Stacey Abrams, but then also helping women to organize and engage in their communities where there aren't opportunities for black women to engage. And that may be challenging the local Democratic Party or the Republican Party. And so we provide financial resources and helping to raise awareness about their races, and then also helping women engage on the issues to help them register and engage people in their communities.
All right, so for some folks out there watching live stream, how can they help?
You can go to Higher Heights for America. That's Higher, HIGHER, HEIGHTSFOR America.org.
Yes, we had a spelling challenge yesterday. I'm kind of like, don't assume folks know how to spell this stuff.
Yes.
Always got to hit them. Always got to hit them with the website. Last question. What are some of the interesting things that the Brooklyn NAACP is doing?
Civic engagement, our civic engagement committee is stellar. Like you talked about using data. We believe in using data in Brooklyn, and so using the VAN, which is the Voter Activation Network, calling people to engage them. So if you live in Brooklyn and you haven't voted since Obama, chances are you're getting a call from a Brooklyn NAACP volunteer. And to that point, we need you to volunteer, to call other people and engage them in the overall process. We are definitely engaged. We just finished a campaign where we were passed legislation on the city level, a part of a coalition called the Right to Know Act, so that if a cop stops you and it doesn't result in the arrest, he has to give you a card with his badge number, his precinct number, and information. And partly because a lot of people would get stopped, and even if you want to make a complaint, you don't know who stopped you. Right. And so being able to include that information, and that was a long battle, but we were able to be part of that coalition and make it happen. happen. And all of those things are what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. I'm giving the charge here tomorrow morning to the delegates.
Okay.
And talking about those things that we need to get back to, right? Our mission was never to win the hearts and minds of racists and bigots. I don't need your hearts and minds. What I need is laws on the books to make sure to protect me and my property from you if you want to be racist. And so that policy, those legislation, if we engage people that way and knowing that they can actually change and make laws and policy on the books, that level of engagement, we can bring them up the ladder more frequently.
All right. Joe, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot. First of all, somebody else they posted. What does the L stand for?
That is a secret. That is a real secret.
Sure, it's a secret.
It is a secret.
You can't walk around and talk about you
Listen,
L. Joy Williams, and
I have
then
bosses
nobody's going to ask what the
who
L is.
have been trying to figure it out for the longest. Just know my family from the South.
I think the L is for Lula. I think she was named Lula Joy Williams, and I think she can't stand Lula, and I think she said it's going to be L. Joy. I know I'm close because she just said from the South. I know it's something like that.
President Nelson addressed the media.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to confirm or deny.
Mm-hmm. And see, it was just like if it was Ethel. She would be E. Joy Williams.
The other thing is that a lot of my political heroes had that first initial and then their middle name, like C. Virginia Fields, H. Carl McCall.
Yeah, they had that because they had them country southern names too.
Yeah, and my family's from North Carolina, so.
Lula Joy Williams. I would appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much.
All right, folks, you just heard him, so appreciate it. Thanks so much. We're going to switch her out. You just heard him speak from the stage. Now I want to bring in Gary Bledsoe. He, of course, is the longtime head of the Texas State Conference of the NAACP. Gary, we're here in our home state. Glad to see you. And you can see you got
home.
So you got the bolo tie going. I see you.
Take the old boy out of the country, but not the country out of the old boy.
So let's talk about what is happening here. We talk about the issue of voting. Texas is one of those hotly contested battleground states battling the federal courts, the Trump administration, and the legislature over voter ID law, which 5 federal judges said was discriminatory in this particular state. What is it looking like moving towards the midterms?
Well, in Texas, we have gerrymandered districts. We just lost in front of the United States Supreme Court in a decision that we completely disagree with. We think that the majority opinion did not give truth to the facts of the case and simply found a way to decide for the state and decided that because the Attorney General Abbott had recommended that they simply adopt the plan, the interim plan by the court, as the best way to comply with the Voting Rights Act, that meant that they didn't intend to discriminate when they did. So we thought that was pretty skewed reasoning, but we ended up losing, and so that puts us in a very difficult position because I think that with that decision, I think Texas and other states realize that they have some wide latitude with the Supreme Court in terms of things that they might do. And so I think that we're going to be there and we're going to be fighting. But the Fifth Circuit just approved their voter ID law in its opinion that the new amended law, SB 25, not the old SB 14, that was the basis for the litigation where we had prevailed because it was clearly discriminatory. And Senate Bill 25 is simply another version of Senate Bill 14, but we lost on the intentional discrimination claim in reference to Senate Bill 14, and the court talked about SB 25 in its opinion. And I think they were dead wrong on SB 25, but it is, well, I guess SB 5. I keep saying 25. I always get that mixed up with the bill that the legislature passed that prohibited straight ticket voting. And so that's another thing that's being done to limit minority voting. So everything from you take it from making it more difficult to get a driver's license, making it more difficult to get a voter ID, making it very difficult to they're going after absentee ballots now. That's not the law, but we had counties that were actually requiring voter IDs for absentee ballots, which is not the law. So it's a complete process of trying to do everything to limit minority voting. The legislature changed the rules on who would supervise precinct elections or who would be able to handle the canvassing of the elections. So it's a complete process where they've gone after the whole mechanism. So there's so many ways that they come at the minority vote. You take 5% here, 3% here, 2% there, and pretty soon you have real numbers, and that's what we have to understand. And so we're going to have to vote at record numbers in order to try to make a difference in the state. You know, one of the things I would say is there's 10% of the population that is the most conservative have been really upset by the election of Barack Obama and what they see as the issue with Hispanic immigration. And because they vote at a 90% clip, they're now dominating Texas elections because they vote in one of the party primaries and dictate who wins there.
Right.
And so the reasonable folks that we've been able to work with and had great relationships at the legislature are not there now. Your people are afraid to be reasonable, and so that's not a good situation to be in.
And that's the thing that at the end of the day, in Texas, you have 2.1 million eligible but unregistered Latinos in this state. What's the number of African Americans who are unregistered in this state?
Well, it's over 1 million, but I don't know that I totally agree with the numbers. But
even if it's still 700,000,
yeah.
I mean, that is a significant number. And the reality is, if you look at the statewide numbers, Republicans typically are winning anywhere from 150,000 to 250,000 votes. And so you have now Republicans controlling every political office in this state. They can be beaten. But it is going to require a massive voter registration effort, then a massive turnout effort, and if that changes, now you have folks who now will be in control of the legislature, who then can fix, frankly, what is clearly targeted efforts by Republicans to limit the number of people who are voting.
And I would agree that's clearly one strategy we need to consider employing. Also look at the Mississippi strategy. You know what they did in Mississippi when they knew that a Republican would be elected, and minorities went over and voted in significant numbers in the Republican primary, so that Todd Cochran could get a Cochran.
He was running against a racist Tea Party guy.
Exactly.
And African Americans voted in the runoff, and that's how Cochran was able to win.
And that may be the kind of thing that folks need to consider here. You know, I don't know how many people at the legislature are really good folks on the Republican side who either didn't run for re-election or who ended up losing. And so it's just changed the whole dynamic, and it gets more and more conservative. And so reason is going to not be around if we have too many more changes in seats. And so there's going to be a real need for good, honest, solid Republicans who are concerned about the state and the country to come together with Democrats and others to somehow push these extremists to the side, because that's going to have to happen, because we're headed for a real crisis because of the real the corner that they're putting us in. And I think they expect that people will just accept being put in the corner, and that there won't be consequences. But this is a different day. I think they're really myopic in thinking that. So I think that the smart thing is to try to actually have some flexibility, but that group doesn't seem to have flexibility. You see what they did to the Speaker of the House, who was from right here in San Antonio, who was a good, reasonable guy, and they just simply ran him out of office, and so he didn't run for re-election. And, Strauss is one of the best things that happened to the African-American community. I wouldn't have said that a couple of months ago because they might have lost him his election.
But you know what, though? But I got to say this here. Your point about Strauss, and the same thing I think about Jeff Flake in Arizona. I think it's going to take those Republicans to decide not to run. It's going to take them to actually run, and for them to actually say, you know what, if you want to beat me, you're going to beat me at the ballot box. I just think that those Republicans are going to have to challenge their party and say, if you want to vote me out, fine, you vote me out. But I'm not going to make it easy on you by not running for re-election.
But and I think that's a legitimate point. But I think the problem is the exit polling shows that there's 10% of the population that vote 90%. And so they skew the election outcome. Let's take, for example, how in the world, in a race involving Governor Perry and Kay Bailey Hutchinson, could Deborah Medina get 20% of the Republican vote, or 19%? I mean, that says a lot right there. And the numbers are just so high, and it's moved individuals who are very reasonable to the right because they're afraid of being run against. And I think what just happened with the United States Congress is not going to make what happened in South Carolina. With a very conservative Republican congressman losing because President Trump did not like him. I think people see the fear in that the most extreme in the right are dominating on the right end of the spectrum on the Republican side. And so you can say that, but I don't know how you're going to win. Unless this is the only way they could do that. Let's say you're in a red state, but you reach some kind of coalition with Democrats who understand this is where we need to be. And so Democrats have to go over and work with them, or either the Republicans have to leave the Republican Party and go over to the Democratic Party.
And the problem you have in a state like Texas, you have to make a decision. You can't vote for any candidate. You have to vote either in Republican primary or Democratic primary. In fact, what you just described, I've actually done, where I've actually said, okay, you know what? Look, I can look at on the Democratic side, I'm going to vote in the Republican primary for this particular candidate that's voting against the extreme person.
Sometimes that's your only vote, because if you realize it's a red county, and I don't know which county, but if you realize that a Republican is going to win, then it sometimes makes sense to vote in that primary, because that's a real vote, unless you think it's a protest vote. Now, I'm not wanting to minimize, because I think there are a lot of races that are winnable, that if you get the right kind of inertia together, because you can really do it. I think there are things that we've done in the past. We've won some elections no one thought we could win, and that kind of thing can be done, but it's got to be very organized, and folks have to be very focused. Right now we're in a clear and present danger. I don't think that it's really hit the nation yet, what's actually going on, and I think that a race makes for good politics, and that goes back for 150 years, whether they're talking about Tom Watson or Williams Jennings Bryan or whoever it might be, and race still makes great politics. We saw that in the 2016 election, right?
Yep.
Race makes for good politics, and until we can change that, it's going to put us in a great predicament, and unless people who don't believe that way divorce themselves from that group, we're going to be in trouble.
All right, Gary Bledsoe, I appreciate it, man. Always good chatting with you.
Great to see you.
All right, thanks a bunch.
Take care now.
All right, folks, on the stage right now, you have the Castro brothers, of course, one former mayor, former HUD secretary, and one other member of Congress. And so I want to go to the stage. We're going to take it from the stage right now to hear what they actually have to say as well.
For all the great work that she did. Thank you very much, Ivy, for your great work. We gather at a critical moment for our nation, a moment where, in many ways, we're going backward. We have in the Trump administration a president who's hostile to hard-fought gains in civil rights, a man who has clearly promoted prejudice and emboldened those who would practice it, a Congress that has gutted the Voting Rights Act, and state legislatures that have gerrymandered so badly that in a lot of places it's politicians who are picking their voters rather than the other way around. And that's where you come in. For more than a century, the NAACP has been a driving force in moving our nation forward. We need your voice, your fight, and your determination now more than ever. And we need your vision to help forge a blueprint for 21st century opportunity. Because we know that what worked yesterday won't cut it today. We know that we need a blueprint that includes health care for every single person in our country and invests in brain power from universal pre-K to free public college and training. A blueprint that raises the minimum wage so that folks don't have to work 2 or 3 jobs just to pay the rent and to put food on the table. and one that enforces our anti-discrimination statutes and fair housing laws so that the market actually works for everybody, no matter the color of your skin or your background. And one that recognizes that no one is above the law, especially police officers who hold a public trust and unnecessarily brutalize people of color too often. And finally, we need a vision that is welcoming of all immigrants and understands that we can unleash the power of 800,000 dreamers and make our country more successful in the years to come. Your vote this November and in the next few years will help shape the destiny of this country. 50 years from now, when you ask somebody who is living in Europe or Latin America or Africa or Asia, where on earth they'd want to go if they were going to leave their home country, the challenge for all of us as Americans is to make sure that when people think of the leader among nations of the world, that our beautiful country is still the place to be. May God bless you. Best of luck. Thank you for being in San Antonio. Thank you.
Let's give it up again for the Texas State Conference, the San Antonio branch, the LDS Church, the Divine Nine, and the Castro brothers. You know, when we first started planning this, and I knew we had to come to San Antonio, San Antonio's the 7th largest city. It's got a Hispanic population of, I believe, I'm told about 62%. And the black and brown communities have so much in common. And I said, we gotta have the Castro brothers. I ain't know I was gonna get both of them at the same time. So that's a double treat. She's not sitting in her seat, but at this time, I was going to recognize my sister, but she's not sitting in her seat. Oh, she moved on me. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in recognizing our Chairman Emeritus and my sister, Rosalind McAllister Brock. I'd like to also recognize her mama, my mama, Mrs. and Lady Simpsons. My wife, Cheryl Turner. And I want to recognize a former NAACP branch president, a member of Congress from West Virginia, Congressman Bobby Scott.
All right, folks, welcome back. Again, we are broadcasting live right here on Roland Unfiltered from the 109th NAACP National Convention. This is the first time it's being held in San Antonio. Joining us right now is the president of the San Antonio branch, Oliver Hill. Oliver, how you doing?
Doing good. How about yourself?
So I take it they've been having you quite busy for a while, having the national convention here in your city.
Absolutely, first time, so it's historic for us.
Just hold that microphone up to you close. There you go.
Thank you.
And so, what does it mean to have the national organization in your city for the first time?
Well, for me, it's one of the things that I've always dreamed of, having more people to come to see what San Antonio is like. People look at the South and say don't want to go south for various reasons that we are all accustomed to, but we believe San Antonio is pretty unique. That it does. We have, I guess you say, different cultures here, and we do have somewhat of a bondship. So I thought we'd want people to see that kind of bondship that we have among all the folk that are here in San Antonio.
And obviously, for you, Ivy Taylor, African American, who was mayor of the city as well. And then you have other elected officials here, a strong Black Latino alliance here as well.
Yes, we do. And we have, believe it or not, our first commissioner, Tommy Calvert, who was elected commissioner. Very young man, very articulate, very good person, I would say. And we were able to elect him as commissioner the first time. ever that we had a black commissioner on Commissioner's Court.
And what a lot of people also may not realize is the number of people who attend the MLK March, the largest in the country, right here in San Antonio. I was the keynote speaker at it this year.
Yes, we'd like to boast on that a little bit because with a population of about 7%, and we can have that kind of kinship among folk to draw that many people, so that's good for us too.
All right, then. Well, Oliver, it is good to see you. Glad to have you here, and good luck for the rest of the week.
Well, I hope you enjoy yourself while you're here, and enjoy the weather along with it, though.
Well, being a native Houstonian, I'm quite familiar with San Antonio, so always
very
glad
good.
to be here.
Thank you so very much.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot.
All right,
all right, folks. Again, voting is you're just going to just step right on off. There you go. Voting, of course, is the dominant issue here, but criminal justice is also a significant issue the NAACP is involved in. Right now, I'm going to be bringing up Sister Ngozi Nduli. She's the Senior Director for Criminal Justice of the NAACP. And so I'm going to be pulling her up for a second. Also on the stage right now is Teresa Deer. She is a NAACP National Board member from DuPage County, Illinois. And so she is speaking right now. And so we will go to the podium, and then coming up next we'll have Ngozi interviewing her about the NAACP's criminal justice work.
Nothing can bring Medgar back, but the cause can live on. It was his wish that this movement be the most successful and one of the most successful of the nation, and one that this nation has ever known. We cannot let his death be in vain, unquote. You can clap right there. In honor of Medgar's dedication, annually the NAACP recognizes elected members of its staff in administrative, management, and executive capacities for their achievements, as well as their dedication and commitment. For 2018, there are 2 such awards. As this award is presented, we commend you and urge each of you to continue the work to make the mission of the NAACP successful, to help assure that his death, that's Medgar Evers' death, will have not been one that will be in vain. So at this time, the first award will be presented to a member of the administrative staff. Since 2008, Ebony Ray has been employed by...
All right, folks, I told you earlier, right now what is happening in Chicago, protests have broken out across the city after an African-American man was shot and killed yesterday by police. The superintendent there has released the body cam footage of one of the police officers showing exactly what took place, and so those protests are continuing. The issue of criminal justice is a huge part of what the NAACP does. And so joining us right now, the senior director who works with that, Ngozi. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
And so even though voting is the dominant part, it's in the theme of this conference, you have the former Massachusetts governor, Deval Patrick, who's going to be speaking here tomorrow. The role that criminal justice plays in terms of the mission of the NAACP today.
Well, I think that voting is crucial to ensure that we're actually moving in the right direction around criminal justice. We know that we right now have a federal administration that is not really interested in pursuing the goals that we're interested in so many areas, and one of them is criminal justice. You started off by talking about the police killing another person, and we know that there's going to be no federal leadership there. So we need to be holding our local officials accountable to ensure that they're prosecuting folks who are not just killing us, but also abusing and disrespecting us, that we make sure that we are actually on top of our county commissioner who's in charge of the jails, and we're stopping jail expansion efforts. So I think that the message of voting and civic engagement is core to the message about how we actually get things done around criminal justice.
And one of the things that, again, that folks don't even realize is I got these text messages just the other day with regards to a documentary on American jail system. And that was an interview that I did on TV One's News One Now, talking about how these jails are the massive amount of money they're charging people just to place phone calls.
Yes.
And folks, we saw what happened in Alabama, where you had sheriffs who were pocketing money that was meant to feed inmates.
Yes.
And so people, it's amazing the type of things that happen that, again, for a lot of folks, they don't know.
Yep.
They don't quite understand.
Yep.
But that is really an additional attack on the poor, on the vulnerable, of folks who are in jail.
Yes, no, absolutely. We really need to be focused on those local jails, because one thing is when you have state prison system, there's centralized oversight. There are serious problems still, right? But you can't get away with as much, right? Based on one sheriff, one personality. But in your local jail, we really, as a civil rights community, have to be watchdogs, because they can kind of get away with making money off of the backs of the people in the jail. So even for an example, so Alabama is an extreme example of personal profit, but we need to think about how county jails are profiting in their own ways, right? So some are profiting by renting out space to other jails, and then what happens when people are actually trying to reduce incarceration and the other jails aren't paying and they have beds to fill, right? There are issues there. We have counties that are reliant on their jail population for public works, right? That free mandated labor that's happening here. So when we're thinking about the whole system of mass incarceration, we have to think strongly about the jails. 10.6 million people a year go in and out of jails. They don't spend a lot of time, but that's a lot of people whose lives are being touched.
Right.
And we know that just a few days in jails can completely destabilize your financial situation, your family situation. You can lose your kids, you can lose your job, you can be evicted. I think that's really important. And one thing on the voting piece is so many people don't realize that the vast majority of the people who are in jail can vote. There are no restrictions on their voting rights, no matter the state, right? Because they haven't been convicted of anything. 2/3 of the people in jail are there pre-trial because they can't make bail. And, we need to be talking to those folks. We need to be going to do voter registration campaigns in those jails. So
You also have, of course, what's happening in Florida. We have the ballot initiative there that has to get passed by 60% of the voters there. That's going to restore the voting rights of those who are formerly incarcerated. That's more than 1 million folks who could get their right to vote. And I'm being told that they really need help there to get the word out and to get people to understand how important this is.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that recognizing how many people's civil rights are being denied because of a past conviction that they supposedly have already served their time, have already kind of repaid whatever debt to society that they had. Florida can really be a game changer if we actually change the system and allow more people to actually get their rights restored. And we should really be talking about automatic rights restoration throughout the country. One thing that New York just did was allowing people who are on parole still to vote, right? So all of these voting laws change throughout the country, but we really have to ask, why did we and when did we start tying people's civic participation to some type of punishment that we're imposing because of a crime? And we can't forget the racial reasons for that, right? So when we're talking about in the aftermath of slavery, the use of the criminal justice system to kind of control the black population, those voting restrictions on people who have had a felony conviction are part and parcel of that racial legacy.
Well, look, we certainly appreciate all the hard work that you and others are doing, and we look forward to what happens over the next few days here in San Antonio.
Great. And we have a Hip Hop Social Justice Summit. I have to plug it. We are really talking about
when is that? What time?
Monday and Tuesday. We have events throughout the day. So folks should come down and really engage with artists who are activists as well, because that's what we all need to be in this age.
All right. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
All right, folks. Again, they're continuing having awards being presented from the stage by Teresa Deers. So what we'll do is we'll go back to the stage, and then we'll be back for more interviews right here, Roland Martin Unfiltered, as we broadcast live from the NAACP convention here in San Antonio, Texas.
He has demonstrated a deep, unyielding, and abiding commitment to empowering NAACP members, and particularly youth, to lead the fight for justice and full citizenship rights. For all of this and so much more, we appreciatively present the Medgar Evers Service of Excellence Award to Jonathan McKinney, Regional Director, Region 7. It is my privilege to present the 2018 Medgar Wiley Evers Award for Excellence for a management staff member to Jonathan McKinney, NAACP Mid-Atlantic Region 7 Director.
Wow. All right. Giving out of the God who's the head of my life. To whoever started this process. I know everything in the NAACP is a process. So to whoever started this process, everybody who had their hands on this process, I want to thank you personally. I know even the committee, the board, Region 3, who allowed me to cut my teeth. Dr. Reed, I always said if it wasn't for Dr. Reed, I wouldn't be in the NAACP. He believed in me when no one else did. So Dr. Reed, I thank you. Yes, to the staff, I would not have, there's no way I could be successful at all if it wasn't for the staff. And I can't, it's too many of you all to name individually. To Region 7, oh my God. Oh my God. I thank you for welcoming me. To Gerald Stansberry, to Kevin Chandler, to our board members in my region, and especially to somebody who pushes me probably harder than anyone else, Akoshwa Ali. I promise you, we talk, about 3 or 4 times a week now? And to all, let's be real. We work very hard, but you all are the volunteers. You're the heartbeat of this organization, and I do everything I do for you. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Congratulations, Medgar Evers Award recipients. Let's give them another round of applause. I am so pleased to inform you that we are also joined tonight by the former governor of Massachusetts, Deval Patrick, a brother who grew up on the south side of Chicago and is going to be the keynote speaker tomorrow at the Clarence Mitchell luncheon, which I believe is sold out, so if you didn't get your tickets, sorry. Let's give him a great NAACP welcome. Now, you know, if anybody listens to D.L. Hughley every day like I do, I just got it from the GED section that, you know, it could be number 46. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. We'll make a good 46. Region 1, are you in the house? Region 2, are you in the house? Region 3, are you in the house? Region 4, are you in the house? Well, you're in the house, but you must be way in the back. Now, I know Region 5 in the house. Region 6, are you in the house? Region 7, are you in the house? Y'all fired up and ready to go. Because now it is my privilege to present the NAACP Vice Chair Karen Boykin-Towns, a most talented and accomplished Vice President of Corporate Affairs, Government Relations, Policy and Communications around the world for Pfizer Incorporated in New York City. Her career at Pfizer spans more than 20 years, having been the corporation's first Chief Diversity Officer, where she was instrumental in implementing a global strategy that resulted in the company being recognized for leveraging diversity and inclusion as a competitive advantage in its operations in over 100 countries. Before joining Pfizer, she was involved in government and politics, having been recruited into government service by her local Senator David Paterson, where she worked as his legislative director, later as chief of staff. David Paterson proceeded to become the first African American and second legally blind governor of the state of New York. It's showtime. At this time, I ask Vice Chair Karen Boykin-Towns to return to the podium to present our featured speaker, my chairman and your chairman, Leon Russell.
Good to see you again. Someone is sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. We have been benefiting from the works, the struggle, and the leadership of our heroes and sheroes for centuries. Some of them fought in the dark and some in the light, some on stage and some off stage, but they fought. And that tradition continues through the heart and soul of millions of our ancestors and also in all of you gathered here tonight. It's because of them we are able to move in this world the way we do, and we must be grateful for that. Do we have all the mobility we want? No, it's a work in progress. There's still work for us to do under the trees that were planted, and it is now our turn to tend to the garden. Tonight, we gather here in San Antonio, Texas, at the 109th Annual NAACP Convention. In a climate that taunts us to confront this fight for our democratic values, the fundamental beliefs and constitutional principles of American society. More importantly, this climate taunts us to face our willingness to go to the next level of this fight for justice, our courage to level up. I received the call for me to level up, to consider the role of Vice Chair of the NAACP National Board of Directors. The time is now, is what I heard as I accepted the offer from the voice on the other end. The time is now indeed. The voice was that of the chairman, our chairman, Leon Russell. The faith he had in me to request that I serve as his partner and his reasoning for me to come on board compelled me to say yes, and it was definitely the right decision. Serving as vice chair these last 5 months and a day, but who's counting, have been an incredible experience. I found the chairman to be a thoughtful decision maker, an excellent listener and consensus builder, inclusive in his leadership style with the patience of Job. You never know who a person really is until you see how they operate in those quiet moments, or those moments when there is strife, conflict, and/or disagreement. Under his leadership, so much has been done and is being done to right our ship. But one that stands out for me is our recent trip to Salt Lake City, Utah. Now, back in May, we had our national board meeting in Salt Lake City, Utah, yes, Utah, which would seem groundbreaking in and of itself. But there's more. During our visit, we met with the leadership known as the First Presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints. Now, when Chairman Russell made the announcement at our February board meeting, there were some rumblings, and a few board members expressed concerns, and if I'm honest, I was definitely one of those folks wondering, why are we going to Utah? But in the days that followed that decision, I realized we were going to Utah because change cannot happen in a vacuum. We were going to Utah because inclusivity is important in this next level fight. And I learned there was common ground to be had in partnering with the Mormons around social justice issues. If you ask most board members in attendance, they will share what an eye-opening experience that meeting was, and you could feel the importance of our visit wherever we went. For the approximately 500,000 Black Mormons and their church, our visit and our meeting was surprising, impactful, and groundbreaking. And despite our reservations, we left that historic meeting with a better understanding of each other's history and the desire to acknowledge the past and move forward to work together for the common good. And y'all, that's our chairman. He has a vision that is to grow our reach, chart new ground, and build our partnerships even with non-traditional organizations, because if there is a common goal around fighting for human and civil rights, that's the ground we work on. He stays focused on doing what is right for the association with the vision of what will make us stronger and a will to make us ready to be bigger and better than we've ever been. It is said that we can spend our time like we spend our money. You can waste it or you can invest it. Leon W. Russell is well known to this organization. He has served as a member of this NAACP National Board of Directors for 27 years. Mr. Russell served as the director of the Office of Human Rights for Pinellas County Government in Clearwater, Florida for 35 years. Mr. Russell served as president of the International Association of Official Human Rights Agencies for 4 years, president of the Florida State Conference of Branches of the NAACP for 4 years, after 15 years as the first vice president. And now, in his second year as chairman of the National Board of Directors to the NAACP, Chairman Russell is continuing to invest his time to ensure a society in which all individuals have equal rights without discrimination based on race. They say, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. Leon Russell was born ready. He has been in this fight for most of his life, so it makes sense that he now sits at the helm of this great association. I'm honored to be his partner and ask you to stand and welcome our 15th chairman of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People's National Board of Directors, Leon W. Russell. He's coming. Mr. Chairman. My introduction was that good, he's gathering himself. So, we are going to hear from the choir first, and then the next voice you will hear, I think that's the way they say it in church, right? The next voice you will hear will be our chairman.
Folks, Leon Russell, chairman of the NAACP, will be giving his speech to all the delegates here. Before the choir is singing, so before we hear from him, we want to catch up with the Castro brothers. We're in your city. I can't tell them apart, so they got to tell you who's who.
Well, I'm Joaquin. I'm the congressman. I represent the main San Antonio district. My brother Julian, that was mayor of San Antonio, and then HUD secretary under President Obama. And welcome to San Antonio. We're so glad that the NAACP is here this year.
Well, I'm a native
fellow Texan.
Well, I'm native of Houston, so I've been here a few times. And so, first and foremost, both of you talked about on stage the climate that we're in, and then really the lack of leadership that we're seeing out of the White House when it comes to issues of race, of immigration, criminal justice?
Absolutely. You know, we're so glad that the theme of the conference is defeat hate, vote. Whether it's been Charlottesville or what we saw recently with family separation at the border, what we have is an administration that has encouraged bigotry, that has unleashed the darkest elements of our society. And the only way to defeat that really is to be more inclusive and to get out there to the polls and elect people who are going to represent everybody and who are going to ensure that we protect hard-fought gains in civil rights, that we offer opportunity to everybody, that we move the agenda forward, not backward, because right now we're going backward.
Well, you just had, of course, Trump speaking in Europe, talking about how immigration has changed.
Yeah.
But then he tweets out, congratulations to France winning the World Cup, a team that was full of immigrants. You know, and so it's crazy. And then this whole deal of how the culture is changing. He is using white nationalist language.
Yeah.
That's what he's using.
Yeah, it's both very sad and tragic, but also very scary to see a president of the United States in 2018 speak in that way and make the kind of appeal to prejudice that he's making.
And say it, I must keep saying it out aloud.
Yeah.
And so his deal is, I am voicing what other people are saying.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is a president who even during the 2016 election, he kicked off his campaign by talking about Mexican immigrants being rapists and criminals. He tries to divide Americans along racial lines and other lines, and that's his strategy. That's part of his strategy, and you can see that he's going to go back to that well in 2020 again and again.
For years, I have said Latinos have numerical numbers, but it's not transferring to political power. To be in this state, 2 million eligible but unregistered. What must be done? And what I've said is, it's going to have to take folks doing what SNCC did in court, sending folks into these places and where they have to live, to go door to door to meet with people. It can't happen just during the election year, 3 months out.
That's a great point. You know, in Texas we have a couple million folks, and you know, the Latino community, the Hispanic community is where we need to make the biggest gains. But folks who could vote, who are not voting, the only way that's going to change is if there's a concerted investment in good old-fashioned door knocking and grassroots efforts to get to folks, to show them why their vote matters. Because right now we know that, you know, the GOP does everything that they can, from voter ID to gerrymandering to disempower people of color. And the only way that we can turn that around is to get to folks and help them to understand what their stake in the future is if they vote. And it's not going to be done by any one candidate. It has to be done consistently every single day, whether there's an election, you know, 6 days from now or 6 months from now.
Yep.
And also, Roland, you know, you can't just count on candidates and campaigns to do it, because campaigns are on a tight timeline and limited resources. So what they do is they send the direct mail, they make the phone calls, they do the block walks to people that are already consistently voting.
Right.
If you keep doing that, you're never really going to add a lot of new people to the rolls. So we need to flip the script and have organizations that are dedicated just to going after people that are not engaged or barely engaged. Frankly, that's more expensive, right? It takes more resources.
And I've said, I told Congressman Chris Van Hollen when he was over the DCCC before he became senator, I said, look, you're not going to go talk to those progressive billionaires and say, look, this is going to be a 3, 5, 7 year effort where you're going to have to send thousands of people who are going to be living there. You know, Ella Baker said to SNCC folks, you got to take your college clothes off, put your overalls on, sit down with the folks and say, what is it you want, to get them to understand why they have to register.
And, you know, and I don't believe that all of those people just don't care at all. I'll tell you a quick story. I was at this Panderia, this bakery, a few years ago, and there was a Hispanic man, and he actually thought that I was him, my brother. But he said there was an election coming up, and he said, you know, I want to go vote, but I don't know who the candidates are. I don't know what they stand for. And I think a lot of people in our communities, they don't get that information because they're not consistent voters, and they don't want to make a mistake. They don't, you know, like sometimes, even I've done it, where you're voting in a school board race or some other race, you don't know anything about the candidate, so rather than
than making the wrong decision. You just say, I'm just not going to vote.
Right.
And I think by and large,
And a no vote is still a vote.
Yeah, I mean, and you've got a lot of people that are in that situation.
Well, I think that, again, I think what has to happen is we have to hit people where they are to say why this matters and to say what matters to you, and then begin to communicate with them that way.
Yeah, you're right. It has to start with what affects them in their daily lives, and not from on high about what people, at the state level or in D.C. think is important. And people can tell the difference. I think people can tell the difference.
Well, look, we certainly appreciate both of you, the work that you're doing. Thanks a bunch.
Same here.
We're going to now take the speech of Chairman Russell from the stage, and thanks a bunch. Glad to be in San Antonio. Appreciate it.
Good to see
All right,
you.
folks, right now we're going to go to the stage and listen to NAACP Chairman Leon Russell give his keynote speech to this body.
God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us safe thus far on our way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Now those words make up the third stanza of the NAACP hymn, Lift Every Voice and Sing. And it is the NAACP hymn, y'all. Since they were written over 118 years ago, they have come to symbolize the struggle by Americans of African descent to be respected and treated as full citizens of these United States. Moreover, they continue to serve as the aspirational goal for the civil and human rights here in this nation. When the words were written, they were intended to be a part of the celebration of the 100th birthday of the great emancipator Abraham Lincoln. However, as they did then, they serve as a reminder of the struggle that was the black man's journey in this country, forcibly stolen from our native lands on the continent of Africa, carted in the holds of sailing ships, chained and bound together. They survived the Middle Passage so that they could provide free labor as slaves in this new world, treated as chattel, objects less than human that were owned by other humans who cast themselves as superior. Their labor was exploited, families were never recognized, and their dignity was denied in order to build the economic base of this new world. At the time the song was written, black folks had been declared free by Lincoln, but only became free as the result of a bloody civil war and the passage of a 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment to the United States Constitution, codifying that they were no longer some other man's personal property, promising full citizenship and extending the right to full participation in the development of public policy. Amazingly, a people who were considered inferior and ignorant were elected to public office and developed public policies that enhanced the lives of every person they touched in most places where they were elected. Most important of those new public policies was the creation in the majority of the southern states of a system of free public education for all children. Yet, as James Weldon Johnson penned that song, forces were in place that were actively working to take away all the benefits of those productive years. The post-Civil War Reconstruction and the era of Jim Crow that succeeded it was intended to return black folks to pre-Civil War status. Even as our constitutional rights remained intact, racial animus, xenophobia, and terrorist lynchings were commonplace. Thoughtful people representing different ethnic and religious backgrounds were concerned about the oppression and disregard for humanity that was demonstrated on the streets of this nation on a daily basis. So much so that following the particularly heinous race riots in Springfield, Illinois in 1908, a group that had agonized over the situation came together in Niagara Falls, Canada. They came together to develop a potential solution. The following year, many of them gathered in a New York City apartment to do something. Thus, on February 12th, 1909, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People was born. 109 years ago, a group of black and white people, people of different religious traditions, professions, and backgrounds, decided that rather than agonize, they would organize. And thus began our organization's generations-long quest for social justice and the end to second-class status for African Americans. And for 109 years, this organization has continued that battle. Today, we are fighting against the same demons, but with different faces. The need to organize, not agonize, still carries that same sense of urgency. In this new era of xenophobia, neo-Nazism, and white nationalism, and amid current efforts to take our nation back to a darker and more dangerous time, I have come to San Antonio, Texas, to say to the NAACP and our allies, the time has come to defeat hate. We call on voters, especially millennials of color, to stand against the face of bigotry and divisiveness. It's not easy acknowledging that 65 million Americans voted for this president. But black voter turnout declined for the first time in 20 years during the 2016 election. Our hope is to vote out the hate. And we need everyone to vote. If we aren't voting and using our voice, others will speak for us. That's how our current president got into office. And that's how we will fight against him. That is how we shall overcome. Good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, delegates to this 109th annual meeting of the nation's oldest, largest, most cussed, most discussed, and bar none, most successful civil rights and social justice organization. Let me thank the Vice Chairman of the NAACP National Board of Directors for that generous introduction. I am very fortunate that Karen is here and that she has my back. Thank you, Vice Chairman Boykin Towns. Thank you for all that you do. I want to welcome you to the 109th convening of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. On behalf of the National Board of Directors, the staff, the Board of Trustees of the NAACP Foundation, the NAACP National Voter Fund, and the staff of the Crisis Magazine, I want to thank you for joining us here in San Antonio as we come together to develop the policies and programs that will govern our association for the next 12 months. We have come to San Antonio, a city celebrating its 300th anniversary, with a local branch of the NAACP celebrating its 100th anniversary. We've come to organize, not agonize. I assure you that it is indeed time to organize, and in the few minutes that I have this evening, I will explain why it is necessary and how we will accomplish our goals. I want to extend our thanks to the San Antonio branch and President Oliver Hill, along with the Texas State NAACP and President Gary Bledsoe, for their efforts in hosting this convention. I want to give a special shout out to the city of San Antonio, led first when we started this effort by Mayor Ivy Taylor, and now by Mayor Ron Nierenberg and all of the city staff who have helped to make this convention possible. This city has rolled out the red carpet. I must also recognize all of the people who are part of the organization Visit San Antonio. They have helped us tremendously in bringing us to this point. Without all of you, we would not be here this evening. Last but not least, I want us to take a moment, as we have done several times in this convention, to lift up the name of a person who is not with us in body, but is with us in spirit. Without this person's efforts, without her cajoling, without her demanding, and she was demanding, and insistence, we might be in some other city tonight. Had it not been for her insistent pillow talk, and I'm assured Oliver Hill will attest it was incessant pillow talk, none of what has occurred thus far and none of what will take place in the coming days would have happened. Now, you've already been asked for a moment of silence, but frankly, I'm not dealing with protocol. The person who spearheaded this effort over a period of several years was Minnie Hill, and silence was not her modus operandi. So would you join me in offering a raucous standing ovation to the memory of the spark plug that led us to the Alamo City? Thank you. And thank you to President Hill and all of the Hill family for supporting Minnie and allowing her to faithfully and intentionally serve her community by serving the NAACP. Now, 109 years ago, our communities faced the reality of racial segregation. Separate but equal was the law of the land. The recently won right to vote was under attack, and the effort to justify second-class status for the Negro was espoused openly on the streets, in the courts, in places where public policy was made, and even from the pulpits of churches across the land. In state houses all across this nation, barriers to the free exercise of the right to vote were being conjured by politicians who cast black people as barbarians, unintelligent, subhumans, prone to crime, to rape and pillage. We were cast as the other, and clearly the other should never be allowed any prominence in our communities. The other, us, should not be allowed a basic public education, and we were always a threat to take someone else's job or position. The other, us, should always be denied. We could never be accepted, respected, or included. Back when our association was born, there was a president of the United States who began to systematically remove Negroes from positions within the federal government. He openly courted white nationalists and white supremacists. He even showed the film Birth of a Nation, Michael Curry, in the White House and hailed it as a masterpiece that portrayed an accurate picture of the South following the Civil War. But thank the God of our weary years, our association went to work organizing all over this country, protesting, demonstrating, developing what would be called the original civil rights toolbox. The NAACP educated, agitated, litigated, and legislated. We organized to end Jim Crow. We fought to end lynching, for equal educational opportunity, fair housing, equal opportunity in employment, equality in the military, and most importantly, the right to cast a free and unfettered ballot. We did not agonize, we organized. My friends and colleagues in the struggle for civil and human rights, the theme of this convention is quite appropriate. As we review the state of our nation, quite simply, we must defeat hate, vote. Tonight, I have come to San Antonio, deep in the heart of Texas, to remind us all that the kinds of things we faced as a people at the turn of the 20th century are back. Xenophobia, the fear of others, has never truly gone away, but it has surged in the past 2 years. White supremacy is being espoused by people who have served and are serving in some of the most important positions in this nation. And once again, the White House has become a sanctuary for vile thoughts, hate, and fear. Ominously, we seem to be facing the gloom of the dark days we thought were past. But I have come by tonight to say to San Antonio, to the NAACP, and to this nation that we will not be turned around. We will not go back. Now, for a moment, Roland, although I am not a preacher, and I am fully aware that there are many illustrious clergy in the house, I want to remind us that in the scriptures, specifically in the 7th chapter of the book of Matthew, verse 12, Jesus says to his disciples, "All things, therefore, whatsoever you would that men should do unto you, even so do ye also unto them. And this is the law and the prophet." So how then can so many who support the current administration attempt to justify that support on a religious basis? I want to point out that civility and the concepts espoused in what we call the Golden Rule is missing from those who hold high office today. Now, further along in that chapter, Roz, Jesus asked, "Do men gather grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles?" He said, "Even so, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit." And I submit to you this evening that on January 20th, 2017, a bit less than 600 days ago, a bad tree was planted at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And the harvest has been nothing but bad fruit every day since. The bad harvest is aided and abetted by a majority of spineless enablers at the other end of that street in our nation's capital. It's time to stop agonizing and start organizing. I say to you tonight that we have heard Dr. King's question. He asked, where do we go from here? Chaos or community? Well, tonight, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People answers unequivocally. We choose community. We choose to reach out rather than withdraw. We choose to welcome, not turn folks away. We choose to organize. We understand this is not the time to agonize. This association and its allies have worked to promote free, high-quality public education for all children. We will organize to prevent those who see profit where they ought to see the promise of a nation's young achievers. We will organize to prevent privatization of our public schools. The NAACP and our partner organizations recognize that a healthy community faces threats created when health care is denied to any group or provided at cost too exorbitant for the average family to afford. We will organize to ensure that health care is accessible and affordable to all. This nation has made great strides in working to ensure that the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the environment that we live in is nurturing rather than toxic. We will organize to ensure that efforts to save the environment continue and to prevent additional Flint, Michigans, East Chicago, Indianas, and to prevent them from becoming the rule rather than the exception. We will organize to ensure that the United States is a leading part of a global effort to save our environment rather than a denier of facts and a major contributor to the poisoning of the only world we know. At the NAACP, we understand that a healthy community works together to reduce and eliminate violence. We respect all life, but we understand that the first step in that process is to love and respect ourselves. Likewise, we understand that we must love our neighbors as we do ourselves. The golden rule, you know, it's important to remember it. We will continue to organize such that those who are sworn to serve and protect and those who are supposed to be served and protected share equal respect and support for each other. Over the years, this association has organized to support legislation protecting consumer rights, protecting worker health safety, and promoting the right of all workers to organize in order to improve working conditions and to achieve a livable wage. We will continue to work with our friends in organized labor to work toward those goals. This is 2018, and all of the issues that we have worked on and all of the gains that we have won in the fight for civil rights for these past 109 years are under attack. While we are distracted by the sideshow at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C., elsewhere across that city and in state capitals and city halls across the nation, there are those in power who are hard at work attempting to dismantle our hard-earned human rights. Public policy making is in the hands of individuals who have no care or concern about the public. They are only concerned about themselves and the spoils they can share as they work to destabilize our future. They work to deregulate, dismantle, and destroy any policies and programs that are aimed at uplifting the lives of all Americans. And they are especially keen to destroy anything that vaguely bears the mark of the nation's only president of color. We cannot agonize. We must organize. So tonight, it is incumbent upon those of us in this room to understand that we are they who must ensure that the aspirational goals espoused in the Declaration of Independence and enshrined in the Constitution of the United States become real for all Americans. In doing so, we must recognize and accept that we are a nation of immigrants. At some point, we were all considered part of a group that was considered the other. Tonight, I challenge us to first understand that we have hope and we have the tools to ensure that all who inhabit these shores are treated equally and that they are in fact endowed with inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We must revisit our toolkit. We must organize ourselves to educate our neighbors about the real facts. We're obliged to agitate in our communities for equity, access to equal education, equal, accessible, and affordable health care, a workplace that provides equal opportunity for all, not just to be workers, but to be entrepreneurs and providers of opportunity. We must commit ourselves to protect the gains we have made in the courts and be willing to litigate on behalf of those measures whenever and wherever necessary. Ultimately, we must understand what Ida B. Wells Barnett taught us so long ago. The ultimate way to ensure justice and equality for all is to be part of the policy-making process. That means that all of us in this room must organize ourselves to ensure that all our voices and our neighbors' voices are heard in the public policy-making arena. Our voices, our currency, is our vote. The value of that vote cannot be doubted. I would only ask that you review the last 600 days in the life of our nation to understand elections matter. Your vote is your voice. In the words of the song, we must lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. We must encourage everyone we know to vote in every election. We must ensure that we have spared no effort to ensure that every person we influence, every person we talk to, every community we live in understands the importance of the vote. Tell those who vote, who doubt the value of the vote, that their vote will make a difference. If they doubt it, they are wrong. Let them know if they had voted in Wisconsin or Michigan, we would not have been subjected to the chaos of the last 600 days. Point out to them that if they had exercised their vote in the last city council election, they may have seen more investment in their neighborhood. Remind folks that in many instances, the difference between Medicare expansion and the failure to provide medical care for the people who need it most was lost by one vote. Show them that when we organize, when we come together, when we work together, we will make a difference. For those who continue to doubt the value of voting, remind them once again that elections are about choosing the makers of public policy. Policies, regulations, and laws that govern us on a daily basis. A policy maker decides that you have been born by issuing a birth certificate. Another policymaker will certify that you are dead by issuing a death certificate. In between those two things, the makers of public policy will influence every major and most minor events in your life. You have a voice in determining who those policymakers will be, and ultimately whether the policies they create will bear good fruit or bad fruit. It's time for every NAACP branch, youth council, and college chapter to reach out to every church, every member of the Divine Nine, every labor organization, every member of a Masonic order, every link, every elk, every member of your community, and organize. We must organize now. We must organize every community. We must engage all of our partners in the current struggle. Our charge is to make a difference now. 2018 is an election year. It is time to choose policymakers at every level. Every member of the United States House of Representatives is up for election this year. This year, there are elections for governor in 36 states. There are state houses and state senate seats up for election this year. There are mayoral races, city council races, county commission races, school board races, and elections for policymakers at all levels and stages of government on those ballots. All across our nation, NAACP, it's organizing time. We cannot simply agonize. The challenge is great, but other generations have faced great challenge. Going back one last time for biblical reference, we are reminded in the 6th chapter of Ephesians, verse 12, of another struggle. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against power, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Now, there is true wickedness in high places in this land today. But if we organize ourselves, we can overcome. We can make a difference when we organize and when we lift every voice to vote. Is anybody listening? Does anybody care? We will fight. We will fight hate. Vote. We must organize. In the words of James Weldon Johnson, we must fight on. We must vote on. We must vote on till victory is won. NAACP, it's organizing time. Defeat hate. Vote. Don't agonize. Organize. Defeat hate. Vote. Don't agonize. Organize. Defeat hate. Vote. Peace and time.
You sure?
Hey, folks, Roland Martin here. That was Leon Russell, chairman of the NAACP Board of Directors. He said, don't agonize. He said, organize. He also said, of course, defeat, hate, and vote. Of course, that is a theme of this 109th annual NAACP convention. And so I want to thank all of you who watched that as well. Joining me right now, a lot of you saw her frequently on TV One's News One Now. Of course, she, of course, was working with AFL-CIO, other labor groups. Now she is head of the Youth and College Division of the NAACP. Tiffany Lofton, what's going on?
She's back.
Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord.
Can't get rid of me.
Just so extra. Just so extra.
Thanks for being here, Roland. We love you at the NAACP, now that I'm here.
It's your first convention.
It's my first convention being on staff.
Right.
Absolutely, yeah, because I've been to a few conventions before, Vegas, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, when it was here in Houston, in Texas before. This is my first time here, and we actually started today for the Youth and College program, so I'm feeling ready. It's awesome.
And so for folks need to understand, so you have the NAACP convention,
right.
And it's sort of like it's like a convention within a convention.
There's like
so y'all doing y'all thing, right?
Yeah, because there's 3. It's like Inception, the movie. So we have this convention that you're looking at here. Then we have the Youth and College program. That's today, tomorrow, and it's on Tuesday. And then we have the AXO program, which is a whole nother conference in itself. Yeah.
And so let's talk about what you are doing with Youth and College Division. How many folks are here that's sort of a part of your constituency?
So I have between anywhere middle school, high school, and college students, anywhere between the ages of 25 and 35. We call them next geners, which you've heard a little bit about today.
Right.
And we have about 700 people that showed up to our opening welcome. Tomorrow we have workshops. We have our public mass meeting. This stuff will get you killed. This nonviolent stuff will get you killed. And then we have parties each night, and our folks are attending and flying in throughout all of it. So some of our folks are also arriving tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to actually up our numbers for our dinner, and our dinner was I guess like scheduled for 700, and people ran out of tickets, and they really want tickets. So we just had to have a conversation with the convention center to increase that. So there's more than 700 people here.
Okay. All right, cool. Now, when you approached about this job, I was one of the folks you called. Like,
I sure did.
Should I do this? Like, what do you think? Why did you decide to take the job?
Roland, you know me. I got my first job out of college at the United States Student Association when I was elected president there. That was a membership-based organization. Then I left that and I worked for the labor movement. That was a membership-based organization. I got involved in racial justice organizing in college when somebody hung a noose on my door when I was running for student body president during Black History Month. And then I also believe in like people power. So to be able to add all 3 of those things together in one equation, it only made sense for me to transition to the NAACP where they have real black folks. Real black folks. Then they have young people, which is what I care about deeply. I just turned 29, as you know. And it's a membership-based organization. And I know that there are a lot of organizations in great places to work, but I still find extreme joy and like my grounding in working for a democracy like this. Even though the process can be bureaucratic or whatever, working for young people, working for black folks, and working for membership-based organizations is where I want to be, and the NAACP is that.
And also, I think when you look at people who constantly complain about NAACP, Urban League, Rainbow Push, I've always been a proponent of taking stuff over. And look, I get the folks who are involved in Black Lives Matter and other groups. My deal is you can complain all you want to about the NAACP, but the reality is it is still here. You have infrastructure. You've got 2,000 chapters across the country. You have all of that. And my deal is, like, don't just say, well, I'm going to start my own thing. No. Take that thing over.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I come from that background in the labor movement where we had labor chapters across the country in different fields and different spaces where workers worked, and they wanted to take over their union, right, on the local level, or they wanted to take over it on the national level. It's important. People don't realize, it's like 3 different sets of people. People don't realize that when they say stuff like that, they're actually the person that's not working. You know what I mean? Like, Black Lives Matter was here last year. D-Ray was here last year. Tamika Mallory from the Women's March is coming tomorrow. We got my son coming from New York City. We got Van Lathan from TMZ coming. All these people that, like, folks seem to gravitate towards or follow because they might be doing stuff more radical. and the NAACP might not be relevant. Like, I just joined the NAACP, and y'all know I've been doing this work for like almost the last 10 years. And I find people who are not doing the work, or people who are not a part of an organization, people who don't work locally in the community, somebody who doesn't donate money or have a membership to any organization, somebody who don't go to church and pay their tithes. Like, they're not involved in nothing.
Right.
Those are the people that say, oh, well, the NAACP is not relevant. Well, look at Black Lives Matter. It's like, no, we're actually all working together.
Or I tried one time to get them to do something,
and I got
they didn't
mad,
want to do it.
And I left.
And it's like, okay, it happens.
It does. It happens everywhere. And that repetition is dangerous because we want everybody to be a part of the process and for them to be a part of the organizing, take up leadership and move this work, right? Like, you getting mad because you didn't get what you wanted at your meeting, or somebody said something that was outrageous and then you leave. That's not going to change it. You left, so it's going to stay the same. So I joined this organization because the Youth and College Division is very valuable. It's very powerful. There's a lot of beautiful young minds that are there that want to be involved. There's a lot of new people who are joining their chapters because school's about to start in August. I want to be here to support and help them. That's why I'm here.
And so what has been the one thing that has shocked you the most or surprised you the most coming in that, like, I heard this, but now you're like, whoa, really?
The bureaucracy. You know me, I'm young, I move fast. Sometimes I don't, respect the process every single time. But when I worked at the labor movement, I had to learn bureaucracy a very different way. The labor movement is a coalition of a bunch of international unions that have coalitions of their chapters that have a bureaucratic process. And here is a different beast. It's not worse or better. It's just a very different beast. And that's what shocked me the most.
What good that shocked you? That what did you come in and use? Was it something that where you thought one thing and then you're like, whoa?
Yep, here's what shocked me. And it wasn't shock like I didn't know. It was shock like, this is more than amazing. I have 550 youth chapters across the country. We represent close to 16,000 young people who are organizing on the ground. And when you think of young people organizing, people don't talk about the NAACP.
Right.
And so, you see what I'm saying? And so my thing is, wow, we have this many young people. We have this many babies. My youngest state president is 12 years old. He's in South Carolina. 12 years old. And he's phenomenal. You might be like, oh, he's 12 years old. Oh, no. He is a gangster. He is a gangster. He was tough. He was leading our own meeting, and then he organized the walkout that we did. When we did the March 24th March for Our Lives actions that we had, our young people were leading that work and moving that work. And when Black Panther screenings were happening, people were out there registering people to vote. My young folks are active. They might not have an NAACP T-shirt on or my lapel pin, but they out there and they're real. And I was so inspired and excited that I have a job where I get to work with those people on the ground on the local level who really care deeply about this work and aren't really worried about where they can't be. They want to just do the work because they believe this world can be better.
All right. Well, so first of all, tell us what's happening tomorrow. We're going to have our cameras there, live streaming your stuff, too.
Yep.
That's why we're here. So what's happening tomorrow and Tuesday?
Of course. So tomorrow, we started our program today with our welcome session. Tomorrow we have two things happening. We have a luncheon, the Roy Wilkins luncheon, and it's a fireside chat panel. Tamika Mowry, of course, who we know very well, will be moderating that panel. We have workshops that are taking place that our students will be able to attend.
Now, they happen at the same time as the Deval Patrick luncheon?
Yes.
Okay, so probably what I'll do is
we'll switch it.
I might have a camera record that, and we're gonna live stream Deval.
You can also live stream on the at NAACP_YC, the Youth and College account. You can find us on there as well at NAACP_YC. It's not long. It's 6 letters. NAACP_YC. Make sure you follow us so you can get all the updates. But the most important part is tomorrow we have our public mass meeting. This is like the town hall of the youth.
And we'll be there.
You'll be there. You won't be at the other stuff, but you'll be there. But we
I
love
have
you
a
for being
camera
here
at the other stuff.
Follow us on Instagram. And Van Lathan, of course, from TMZ, who checked Kanye West that folks saw earlier. He's going to be moderating our panel. We have my son, the rapper, award-winning rapper from New York. We have Philip Agnew, co-founder of the Junior Defenders. We got Blair Imani. She's a black queer Muslim woman who is the founder of Equity for Her. And then we have Jamira Burley, who's a gun rights advocate. And we're going to have a great panel discussion. It's called This Nonviolent Stuff Will Get You Killed. You don't want to miss it.
All right, then. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, Roland.
All right, your bum.
Love you. See you later.
And thank you for getting dressed up today.
Look, and then
no T-shirt.
Do not come for me on TV, okay?
Whatever. All right, folks. So Tiffany, I appreciate it. Now we're going to swap Tiffany out.
Thanks
now
for being here.
I appreciate it. With the chairman of the NAACP, Leon Russell, he's going to slide right over here. So I'll take that from you. I'll hold it. And so, come on. There you go. All right, take a seat there. Leon, how you doing?
I'm getting my wind back.
I got you. You were doing a little preaching up there just a few moments ago.
Just a tad.
You said what in the ending of your piece there, you said to folks, "Don't agonize, organize."
That's right. That's right. Because it's time for us to stop whining, to stop saying that we can't do anything about what's going on, and understand that we organize, and if we change the complexion and the look, and I mean that in a broad sense, of legislative bodies all across this nation, if we change city councils, because we have to understand that this is not just a Washington, D.C. problem.
Right.
It's a problem at all levels of government. Mm-hmm. So we have to learn that we have to vote in every election, and we have to vote for folks who are about the business of the people, and not folks who at this point, it seems to me, show off that what they want to do is fill their pockets rather than improve the lives of any American.
How many folks are here?
Right now,
in terms of who registered for the convention,
we don't have the final registration figures for the day. I would suspect that there are about 5,000 who are actually registered delegates for the convention. There will be another 2,000 who will be through with the job program, and we'll have other folks coming in and going.
Okay. And some of the highlights, of course, tomorrow, Deval Patrick, former governor of Massachusetts, will be speaking at tomorrow's luncheon.
Absolutely. And we look forward to hearing what he has to say. And, you know, there's speculation about what he wants to do in the future, and maybe we'll get a hint of that.
Also, I had some folks who hit me up on social media. They've been asking about Reverend Dr. William Barber. Will he be here? Will he be speaking?
Dr. Barber should be here. He's not speaking, but he will be participating in some of the meetings and what have you.
Okay. All right.
You know, Dr. Barber is a member of our board of directors.
Oh, I know. I know.
So he participates very actively in the governance of the association.
And that's the thing. People, he stepped down as a head of the North Carolina State Conference. He's still a part of the board of directors.
Absolutely.
What's the one thing?
A very vocal member.
What's the one thing you really want folks to leave here with?
I want them to understand that there is a need for them to really take voting seriously and to influence other people to really get out and vote. We know that if the people who were registered to vote, eligible to vote, had voted in the last election across this country, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Florida, that we wouldn't be agonizing, if you will. We would be in a different situation. We wouldn't be looking like fools in the eyes of the world.
All right. Well, Leon, is great. Glad, of course, this day is done already. Tomorrow, of course, will be live streaming Derek Johnson's speech tomorrow morning.
Absolutely.
Deval Patrick as well, as I said, also what Tiffany Loftus is doing with the Youth and College Division. So looking forward to it.
It's going to be an exciting convention. I think we have some things coming in later up into Wednesday where we're going to really sit down and talk about the voting process that are going to really be exciting as well.
All right. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
All right, folks. And so, again, we will close out this broadcast of Ross. It is right here. Thank you very much, sir. We'll close out this broadcast of Roland Martin Unfiltered. It has been a great couple of hours as we have heard from the chairman, Leon Russell, NAACP. Also, Gary Bledsoe, Texas State Conference chair of the NAACP. So many other voices. I want to thank the Castro brothers for being here. Tiffany Lofton, Ngozi, A.L. Joy Williams, and all the other folks who participated, who sat down with us. Lots of stuff for us to share. Please go to the NAACP's website for more information. Again, we will have more of these interviews. We'll be live streaming this a little bit later as well. Again, we'll be breaking up some of these interviews. So over the next 24 hours, we'll have some of this. And don't forget, folks, we are doing this as the precursor to Roland Martin Unfiltered, which will be launching on September 4th, a daily digital show And you'll be able to see on Facebook, on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Periscope. We'll be uploading it later on Instagram. We'll also be podcasting it as well. But we need you to support it. We need you to tell others to support it as well. I'm trying to get 20,000 of my followers and my supporters to contribute at least $50 to make this happen. We want to thank AFSCME for coming aboard as a corporate underwriter. There are other people who we're talking to as well, but we really want this to be an unfiltered platform that is independent, that is unbought and unbossed, in the words of the late Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm. And so these are some of the things that we're going to be doing across the country, broadcasting, live streaming from events such as this. And so we want you to be a part of our Bring the Funk fan club. So I want you to go right now to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. If you can't give $50, that's fine. You can give $40, $30, $20, $10, $5, $1. It doesn't matter. But we really want you to make this happen, because you've always heard me say we have to tell our own story. We must be able to be in control of our own narrative. By being independent is a way for us to do it. And so I want to thank all of you for watching this Roland Martin Unfiltered broadcast from the 109th NAACP Convention here in San Antonio. We will see you tomorrow morning right here. So last thing, I want you to check your notifications. Turn your notifications on Facebook, on Periscope, on YouTube as well. So every time we go live, you will get an alert on your phone, on your iPad, on your computer, noting that we are broadcasting live. Thank you so very much. I shall see you guys tomorrow from San Antonio, the NAACP Convention here in my home state of Texas. Have a great night.